All right, Brian, so we talked a little bit about how they got to where they are. Now let's talk about some of the decisions they've made after they began getting out into the workforce. And here's one of the things we asked. We want to dive into where they live. Now, here's the perception that if you're a millionaire, you must live in a very high cost of living area. You must live in a Los Angeles or a New York City, and you're probably so well-heeled that the way that you afforded your very, very expensive house and your very, very expensive high cost of living area is you must have been able to write a check and pay cash for it. That's probably what millionaires look like, right?
Yeah, until you read The Millionaire Next Door. And if you read The Millionaire Next Door, you recognize that a lot of your millionaires might actually be in your neighborhood. You just don't know they're there because, once again, wealth is silent. It's the exact opposite of what you see on social media. Wealth actually resides on that net worth statement, not necessarily in how cool or how rich you look, and that shows up in the houses our millionaires live in.
Yeah, let's look at the actual data. When we polled them and said, okay, tell us about the current market value of your home, it was pretty exciting. And remember, these are millionaires. These are seven-figure net worth individuals. 26% of our respondents have homes that are valued at under $500,000. 48% of our respondents have homes that are valued between $500,000 and $1 million. That means that 74%, 3/4 of our millionaires are millionaires not because they live in $1 million homes. Their home values are actually less than $1 million. There's only a very small segment of our population that lived in the multi-million-dollar to $5 million plus homes. So the mega mansion in the super high cost of living area is more likely the exception, not the rule for millionaires.
And realize this is recent data. We actually sent this survey out just a few weeks back.
Right.
So this is actually post-pandemic, post-inflation run-ups. And I thought it was very telling. Only 1% of our population of millionaires live in homes greater than $5 million. So lifestyles of the rich and famous, cribs, and all the other perceptions is false. The reality is our Millionaire Next Door is the reality for most millionaires in America.
Now, remember, another perception was they paid for it in cash. Well, when we actually asked our millionaires, the majority take out mortgages, especially on their first home. So we asked them questions. Hey, when it came time for you to buy your house, when it came time for you to make a purchase, what did the down payment on your first home look like? And I thought the answers were wonderful. 31% of our respondents, almost 1 in 3 said less than 5%.
This was me.
This was me. I also
This
fell
is
in
why we drafted, when we do rules for both the financial order of operations, for Millionaire Mission, my book, I wanted to make sure we were not hypocrites. And one of the dirty little secrets I knew about personal finance is when I interview all my financial advisors and I ask them, hey, when you bought your first home, how did you pay for it? Now, look, there's exceptions.
Sure.
I think about 2. I have one CPA here, and then I have another one who's, y'all will know who he is if I mention him. They're just different. So they did put down the greater than 20%, like you hear a lot of the financial commentators and content creators say. But the vast majority of them did fall into this 31% camp. But that's not all where it stops. There are a portion that put down 5 to 10%. Yep. That's at 27%. And then 19% put down somewhere between 10 to 20%. But it was 3/4 of them are definitely below that 20% down payment that you hear so much about in personal finance.
So if you're someone out there trying to get into your first home and you're trying to save up for that down payment, take a breath and say, it's okay if I can't get to 20%. As a matter of fact, if you want to know some ways to go figure out how to buy a home, we have an entire home buying checklist you can check out at moneyguy.com/resources, where you can actually see exactly what our rules on home buying are so that you can make sure you're making the home buying decision the right way. All right, so Brian, homes are a very expensive thing that individuals buy. Let's talk about the second thing. When we think about rich people, when we think about millionaires, we think about their whips, we think about their cars, their automobiles. So let's talk about, what do millionaires drive? Well, the perception is they lease their car. Millionaires, there are all kinds of commentators that say, I would never own my car. I'm only going to lease it, and I'm going to change it so I'm in the newest model every 3 years. That must be the behavior that millionaires execute.
If you ask me, most people are driving around in their opportunity for wealth. Is because when you see the stats out there, and we could have very easily made a slide for this, but the typical car payment when people not leasing but are buying their cars, they're financing them for 70 months.
It's amazing.
That is so beyond 23.8 because I want you paying off your car in 3 years if you do have to finance it. The other thing I think is interesting, the average car payment is now well beyond $700 a month. And I think about what would that look like if that person was funding their Roth IRA or saving for the future instead of financing at $700 a month for 70 months. There's a lot of people that are more concerned about their perception and trying to impress people who probably really don't care than the reality of what wealth is and what vehicles are. And that's why when we do 23.8, this is to get you from point A to point B so you can get to your original wealth builder as you're starting out, your job. This 23.8 is never to buy a fancy or a luxury car. Think Corolla, not Land Cruiser.
I love it. So when we think about the reality, our clients don't lease cars. They typically own cars, and the vast majority keep them for at least 7 years. So these are not folks that are changing out new cars, new models every couple of years. These are folks that recognize in the first 4 years of car ownership, you can lose 60% of the value through depreciation. They make sure they drive their cars for a long time. And the majority of our millionaires pay for their car in cash, but they didn't always. That's not something they started doing. And I think a lot of financial commentators out there say, you have to pay cash, have to pay cash, have to pay cash. Well, unfortunately, sometimes that's just not possible, especially early on in your wealth building journey.
Well, timing matters. I mean, this is the stat. If you'll show it, Bo, is that our research shows of our millionaires, yes, 65% of them are paying cash for their cars. And look, I've paid cash for my most recent cars.
Sure,
You've paid cash for your most recent cars. But is that a fair picture for somebody who maybe is looking at our content in their early 20s? When they see that and you say, millionaires pay cash. Yes, they pay cash once they're millionaires. But if you go back, and this is the question I always, when I hear commentators say millionaires pay cash, I'm like, yes. But let's go ask those same millionaires, what did their first car look like? Because I know what my journey looked like when I was coming out of college, and I was broke as a joke, but I had a lot of opportunity because I had this accounting degree. I had to finance a car. Yep. And sure enough, when we asked our clients that are millionaires and above, 71% finance their first cars.
So that's why we have 23.8, so that if you are someone who's not in the position right now where you can pay cash, but you still need reliable transportation, use 23.8 to your benefit and don't feel guilt about that. And then hopefully you can continue along in your financial journey until one day you can be one of the 65% that gets to pay cash for their automobiles. If that day is not today, that's okay.